We're going to let people enter the program now, but
Okay.
thank you for those who are already starting to join us. I'm glad you guys are here. We'll get started in just a moment as more people are coming in, but as you can see, we have two of us here today. My name is Caleb Fowler. I am the Assistant Director of Admission at Rhodes College in the admission office, and we have with us Coach Matt Dean, who is our Athletic Director. So we're excited to talk to you, and we're excited that more of you are joining us as we speak now, but this should be a good section. Thank you so much for joining this section now, but we do have workshop Wednesdays coming up over the next 2 months, really. So every Wednesday around 5 o'clock, this is one of our early sessions. We will be having different topics to present about how to do a virtual visit and maximize that experience, what to do during COVID in terms of your application process, how to connect with colleges like that, kind of making your college list. I would encourage you to check out our website for more details on how to sign up for those workshops. Again, those will be every Wednesday around 4 or 5 o'clock, so please be checking those out. But as we have some of our final people join us now, I want to thank you guys for joining us. We are really glad that you guys are here to talk about athletic recruitment and what that looks like, both how it's looked historically, how it's been looking past several years, but also what it might look like during COVID-19 and afterwards. So I have with me Matt Dean, our Athletic Director. He's been with the college now for 29 years, so he is very well experienced in this realm of athletic recruiting. He has coached several teams over the years, and we're really glad to have him today. So with that, I want to turn it over to Coach Dean, but I also want to remind you guys that if you have questions, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You don't need to use the chat function, but please use the Q&A box for questions for Coach Dean or for admission. And as we go along, I will either type back a response to you or Coach Dean will answer those in the Q&A portion at the end. But please be thinking about your questions as we go along, and feel free to shoot them in the Q&A box as we go along as well. But thank you so much for being here, Coach Dean, and I'll turn it over to you.
Caleb, I just want to say thank you for allowing this opportunity to speak to some of our prospective students. And those of you on the call, I'm just really excited that you are joining us today. And my goal is to tell you a little bit about our athletic program and also tell you about some things in COVID that I think could be helpful for you as you go through this process. And many of you, this could be the first time, and many of you could be looking at multiple institutions as well. So we understand that. Caleb had mentioned, I just completed my 29th year at the college. I've had the opportunity to coach 4 different sports here. Men's basketball as an assistant for a long time, almost a decade. I started our women's field hockey program here, was our first women's golf coach, and had the opportunity to coach our women's basketball program as a head coach for 16 years. So the last few years, I have been in administration, and the last 2 years, I have become the athletic director. So the one thing I can tell you is our program right now is, as an overall whole, is at the top of the league. We have had 3 straight Commissioner's Cups, which is basically the award that goes out to the best overall program in our entire conference. We are in the Southern Athletic Association. So one of the things that makes us unique is, we do a lot of travel, and I don't want to worry you about that because our student athletes perform at a really high clip. This past year, we had 367 student athletes that were named to the SAA Academic Honor Roll. Out of 508 student athletes that are on rosters, that's an incredibly high clip. That's over 70%. I mean, 70% of our student athletes are achieving at a 3.25 GPA or higher. So, we feel like we are doing it in the classroom. We are doing it on the field. We're also doing it in the community. As a lot of you know about Memphis and our relationships with a lot of the hospitals, in particular St. Jude, our students have an opportunity to do things way beyond just, playing the sport. And that's what's been, for me, the best part of being here for 29 years, because it really is about student first. Now, some of our programs more recently that have been just really exceptional in certain areas. Our women's golf program has won 3 national championships in 6 years. Their head coach is Mike Clary, who was a long-time athletic director here, was our former football coach, and has now built our women's golf program into just one of the finest programs in the country. Our men's golf program is traditionally a top 20 program nationally as well, has finished as high as 5th nationally, I believe. This coming year, actually, we are in the midst of Coach Clary working with both programs because Coach Cochran had retired, who was a longtime golf coach for us. Our men's and women's lacrosse programs have been in the Sweet 16 on multiple occasions recently. Dave Cesaro, Megan Keelan have done a fabulous job. And the neat thing about that is we started men's lacrosse really 9 years ago from, the ground up. And we feel like now it's one of the proudest things we do. And we're really proud of our student athletes in that sport as well. 2 years ago, our baseball program was 3 outs away from the College World Series. And Coach Jeff Cleanthes, who leads our baseball program, is a former athletic director and has done a marvelous job with our baseball program. Women's track has won 12 straight conference titles. Now, you think about that and the challenges that we've ever been in a track meet, and there's so many components. Robert Shankman is like an icon for our department. He also serves as an assistant AD, and he's been the head track and cross-country coach for 30 years for all sports, men and women. We also sponsor indoor track and field. So the year starts out with cross-country, goes to indoor, then goes to outdoor. So we have a lot of our athletes that participate in all 3. It's a really neat situation. Women's basketball has won 4 SAA titles in 8 years. Had a chance to go to 4 NCAA tournaments. I was very fortunate to coach 3 of those teams in consecutive years, and just really proud of some of those student athletes I had a chance to coach in those years as well. And we're just really proud of all of our student athletes. For us, I mentioned the success on the field because I want you to know you're looking at and you're maybe coming to a really, really good, I would say, top 20, top 30 overall athletic program in the country. But that's not what excites me the most. I just think our student athletes excel so much in the classroom, and when they leave Rhodes, I'm proud of the fact that I've coached literally 5 or 6 doctors, 5 or 6 lawyers, many successful business women throughout the course of my tenure. That's what Rhodes does for you. It prepares you to go on to your next journey. Philosophically, for me, everything we do is centered around the student-athlete experience. Classroom, sport, city of Memphis as well. What makes this tough right now is for you, is many of you are trying to research and set up visits and try to go to colleges, in particular here to visit. I will tell you, we are working right now with a policy for guests. I know Caleb and his staff are working on that. And our hope is that we will have some answers for you relatively soon on how you can coordinate your upcoming visit. And what I'm going to try to do now is kind of lay out how I think I would approach if I was a student athlete or mentoring a student athlete recruiting for this year, because it's a little bit more challenging. The first thing is, this summer, many of you lost exposure. And what I mean by that is many of you are used to, in the summertime, going to showcases, to gyms, to tournaments where college coaches, a lot of our coaches are at those showcases as well, observe you, right? So I'm sure there's some anxiety about how you're going to get found in this process. But I just want to reassure you, there are many ways in that discovery process. For me, one of the first pieces of advice I would give a student athlete right now would be to have your high school coach, your summer league coach, or your AU coach, whatever it may be. I would have them reach out to our coaching staff if you're interested in playing a sport. I think that's the easiest way to get your name in front of a coach, right? So when you do that, at the same time, you are also looking at providing film, some accolades, but also, we want to know the academic information as well. So it's very important to work on your application to get that in to admissions. Caleb, I'll defer to you in this, but honestly, the sooner the better. And usually that's probably around early August, I'm guessing. I'm not complete on that. And we do have an early read process where if we get your transcripts, we can get them to the admissions counselor and they can read them. So I don't want you to worry about the lack of summer exposure. I can tell you in my coaching career, I've had some wonderful student athletes that have become very successful that I may not have seen the summer before their senior year. So I know that's a big thought in your mind right now, because a lot of you are used to this summer or heard about it in previous years, that's how you gained exposure. So that's obviously not the end all. After your coach has reached out, I think it'd be wise to contact admissions and try to talk to the regional counselor. So we have traditionally counselors assigned to various parts of the country, Caleb. I think that's what we've always done. And you need to let them know that you're interested as well, because someone is going to need to coordinate this visit. It's very important that you visit. And every sport's different. And I'll give you an example. In basketball, sometimes I didn't have visits until, the school year had started because of all the travel that had gone in the summertime for those student athletes to play their sport in front of various coaches and competitions. But now, honestly, you have the ability to reach out and maybe look at setting up some visits. And obviously the visit is really crucial. One thing that we're going to probably be a little different this year, and I don't want to speak Caleb out of sorts here, but the way we go around an overnight visit may be different. You may be required to spend the night in a hotel instead of on campus. That's not been decided, but there may be some different parameters on how we're going to do business. But honestly, we're going to work around it. As coaches, we're going to find a way to get you on campus to the right people, and also for you a chance to meet some of your potential future teammates. And I think that's another thing that's really important that's lost in the process too sometimes. If you're going to play a sport, you're going to need to start a relationship with that coach and with your teammates. And that revolves around communication. You need to start communicating via email with that coach, and then trying to find a time where maybe you can even reach out to some of the current student athletes. And I think that's really essential. When I recruited for a long period of time, when I talk to student athletes, my biggest thing is their happiness, and you have to feel like it's the right fit. And a lot of times you can't do that unless you come to campus. So we realize that. This year, you're going to have to be more persistent with your communication. You're going to have to continue to reach out, because it is a very fluid situation with the way we do business these days. Things are changing. As we know, a lot of us went remote last year. Our goal at Rhodes is to be back in the classroom in August. That's our goal. That's what we've stated, and that's where we are right now. And we hope that we can maintain that through the whole course of 20 and 21. You may have seen some literature that our academic calendar may change a little bit, but our goal is still to get you in front of some of the finest faculty in the country. Also, continue to take advantage of these virtual opportunities, these Zoom meetings. And that's what really creates that dialogue towards the relationship. My goddaughter is being recruited from a different part of the country. She had the opportunity the other night to be on a Zoom with a couple of coaches. And though she couldn't go on campus yet, it really was helpful for her to get a chance to know the coach. So I encourage you, when you're talking to our coaches, you want to find a way to get, face-to-face with them. Even though we know it's not the same as in a room, we want to find a way to have some contact and talk about that initial visit. The good news is, from our standpoint, we think every day we're getting closer and closer. We really feel like in 2021, in the spring, we're going to be moving towards, hopefully as a country, a lot of remedies to treat COVID-19, though we're not there yet, obviously. I always recommend for recruits that if they get a chance to go on our website and watch some of our games via the webcam. All of our sports are broadcast on the web, and that way you get a chance to watch those teams play and participate. The thing is, recruiting has always been about the right fit. So for me, trying to mentor some people that have talked to me about, what are the best things to do during COVID-19? To me, a lot of it will never change. You have to contact coaches, more so than ever, because they were not there this summer to watch you play. So you're going to have to reach out via email. Another thing, I know many of you get contacted by recruiting sources that want to get your money so they can help promote you to these different coaches. Let me save you some money. You can do this yourself. You can create not only an academic resume, you can create an athletic resume, and you can also, with all the different, film opportunities, you can create some highlights and some game footage that you can send our coaches. So I think it's important to have all three. I really think for the Rhodes coaches, the biggest thing for us is to know that this is the right place for you academically, and this is the fit. And that's the same thing admissions is looking at. Are you a right fit admissions-wise for our college? So we want to make sure that we hear from you. I just saw a question, but I will tell you, I think the initial contact is going to probably be email. But then once you establish that relationship with the coach, I think coaches are very willing to get text and respond back in a very short manner, because that seems to be what we've done at this level for a long period of time. So you really want to make sure that you contact these coaches in the next few weeks. Get your name on the board, okay? So a lot of things are going to remain the same. In the past, you spent a lot of time in the summer traveling with your teams. And I know it's difficult not to be out there playing right now. But, my advice to you as you prepare for your seasons, to continue to do some of the same things you've always done. Work out, find a place where you can work out, stay safe, still be respectful of what phase your community's in terms of the social distancing, and just prepare yourself to be ready for the fall. Fall sports could look differently. They could. We don't know, even at our level, how many people will be in the stands, right? We don't know yet how many games will be played. But we're really preparing like the season is going to happen in full force. So for us, being part of the Southern Athletic Association, we'll find out more about this in the next few weeks. And it is our goal to probably post information on our websites when we find out more information about our seasons. because some of our schedules could be altered. The last things I want to talk about is some of you want to know probably, okay, can I schedule this visit and go to a game at the same time, right? Because a lot of times visits are coordinated around games. And, that is our hope that, a student athlete that wants to come on campus and visit the college on a weekend and watch a team play that they want to play for would have the opportunity to be in the stands. That is still our hope. That is not finalized yet, though, really across the country on how we're going to do that, to be honest with you. So, Caleb, I kind of went through my bullet points, probably a little bit short on time here, but I just want to make sure that if I'm missing some questions, I can answer those for the group.
Sure. Well, Coach, could you tell us a little bit about the advantages that athletes have as students and athletes in the city of Memphis, and how that really plays a role in just our student experience as student athletes at Rhodes?
Oh, it's a great question. So, first of all, when you talk about advantages of student athletes, I've always felt like this, and no different as a parent when I had my kids competing at the high school level. I think our student athletes are extremely focused during their season. If I hear one complaint, sometimes our student athletes miss the season because out of season they feel less focused and sometimes wane a little bit in their organizational. Because when you're in season at a place like Rhodes, you really have to be organized to do everything. But you look at the city of Memphis and some of the opportunities we have are not just with Rhodes. Some of our student athletes, first of all, have opportunities to stay in the summer and work internships. And by doing so, some of our student athletes even stay on campus and have a chance for affordable housing in the summer as well. And that means they also have a chance to voluntarily work out at Rhodes. I'm a big sports fan, and I will tell you, culturally, we have one of the neatest teams in America in the Memphis Grizzlies. Really great young professional basketball franchise, and some great young talent with John Morant and JJ Jared Jackson. So you're going to have opportunities to watch some really neat sporting events. We brought professional soccer to Memphis. We have AAA baseball in Memphis. We have a lot of things downtown culturally to do. So the city of Memphis has always played a really large role in the landscape of sports. Collegiately, though a lot of people talk about the Memphis Tigers, Rhodes College is only one of two football teams in the entire city that has football. Us and the Memphis Tigers. You look at some of our programs that are kind of relatively new. Lacrosse. Memphis has now started. If you look at all of our high schools, a lot of them are playing lacrosse. You couldn't have said that 20 years ago. So Memphis is starting to progress in those areas by adding new sports. Another thing that I think is really good for our students is they get a chance, because of the size of our city, to go to different places and train and do some really neat activities. A lot of our students will go to Mud Island and work out. And we quite frankly, we have great facilities on campus. You don't necessarily need to leave Rhodes to get an athletic experience. But the city of Memphis, for me, has been so crucial to Rhodes. If you look at some of our rebranding efforts, we want to make sure that we can get Memphis involved in our thought process of our student athletes, because our students really relate to Memphis. They love Memphis, and sometimes they stay and work in Memphis after they graduate from Rhodes.
Coach Dean, could you speak
Yes.
a little bit about how student athletes are able to engage with their studies, particularly in fields such as the natural sciences? Say they want to become a doctor. You mentioned that you've had student athletes of yours continue on to become doctors and lawyers. For some of those that often require research experiences or internship experiences, could you share a little bit how student athletes are able to fit that into their schedule?
Caleb, that's really great that you said that, because one of the things I forgot to mention was our philosophy has always been that if a student athlete has a lab or an internship and they may end up cutting in the practice time, that it's allowable. They can come to practice, after a lab or after an internship. And we work around that schedule because at the end of the day, that's why they choose Rhodes. Is academics are one, and then we want athletics to be that close to, right? And we want to make sure they have the ability to do some of those things you're talking about. Also, and you know this, Caleb, our placement rates for med school have been historically very, very high. You go through the pre-bio here, and with Dr. Jaslow and his group, you are prepared not only for the MCAT, but also for med school. So I just think it's really a mindset here in the natural sciences that we have a lot of focus in-house, but some of our best athletes of all time have been in those majors. So it's really worked well in terms of their focus in the classroom, didn't take away from their performance on the field.
Coach, we have a question about creating a persuasive highlight video or just advocating for yourself in the recruitment process. Are there any details you think are important in creating a highlight reel or the other elements to just self-advocacy in the recruiting process, such as even how recent should the clips be, especially if seasons might be delayed?
I think it's a good question. For me, a lot of times I like the whole game footage because, a highlight reel sometimes can make you look really good. That's what they're intended to do. I want to see the good and the bad. And so don't ever be afraid of sending a complete game film, because we know, I'll share with you a story. I've been doing this quite a while, and I went to go watch a young lady play a basketball game. So I show up at the gym and, didn't have the greatest night, but, afterwards I talked to her and her family, and she said, "Coach, I apologize. I didn't play well. You were in the gym and I was nervous." And I said, "Well, if you're going to play for me, there's a good chance I'm going to be in the gym every time." So we understand that in games and the amount of games you play, you're going to have some nights when the ball doesn't go in, you miss a field goal, you miss a corner, whatever. So don't be afraid to share with us the entirety of a game film. We still want the highlights, no problem with that. And I think that helps us identify skill set, right? So we love to see, shooting form and, tackling form and all these things that are involved to participate in your certain sports. But don't be afraid to send us a game film. And I do think this is important for me. I would love to hear from someone besides yourself. I would love to hear from a coach, be it a high school coach, be it an individual trainer, be it an AAU coach. I want to hear from someone that can also kind of talk about your character, not just how good a player you are, how good a student you are, and that's always been my mindset in this business.
Thank you, Coach. We have a question just about the balance of athletics, academics, extracurriculars. You've spoken a little bit about it, but as you reflect on your 29 years at Rhodes, could you maybe share maybe a story or two about some of your students and their best practices for how to maintain that balance, or even just how they spread themselves through their multiple activities?
This I'll share, and this is a true story. So one of my things, and I believe this for whoever is listening, first semester is crucial, and you have the opportunity to really dig yourself a hole. And I also know it's a hard transition. You're away from your family, and some of you are looking forward to that freedom, but I promise you, you get here and it's different. You're going to miss them. So you have to put everything you have in that first semester. I had a young lady from New Jersey, played for me back in 2002, 2003. First semester was tough. Was very social. Got a 1.6, and we weren't sure we were going to be able to keep her long term, right? But We talked about, taking it one class at a time, being more focused and committed in the classroom. 4 years later, she was an All-American on the floor, above a 3.0. She's now in our Hall of Fame, has 3 kids and a beautiful family, the whole 9 yards. And, was very close to leaving Rhodes. So my advice is that first semester, it's very challenging. It's going to be challenging regardless of the time, but even more so this year, right? Focus on academics more so than athletics. And as a coach telling you that, but you have got to do the work that first semester to stay here for 4 years. And you talk about balance. I think what happens for our athletes is they get used to figuring out that balance in season, that ironically, their struggles sometimes are out of season because now they have that extra free time of no 2-hour practice a day or, lifting weights where, it's just a natural tendency to kind of not, remain as focused. And for me, if you're a fall sport athlete, you have to have that focus in the fall, but don't lose it in the spring. Don't let all the goodwill and hard work you've done in the fall, go to dismay because you didn't really do the work in the spring when you had more time to be social. Trust me, I went to college. Social is part of it, but you have to find a balance. And for me, my students that were the most successful were ones that were just as committed in out of season as they were in season. And I think the thing about Rhodes is the faculty is amazing. The faculty are going to allow you the opportunity to engage with them when you have problems or questions. You're in a smaller class setting, and I think that's very helpful. Another thing I've always felt like when you go to school and you're part of a sports team, you have an instant friend group, an instant social base, and another advising base with the coaching staff. Take advantage of those opportunities. Don't be afraid to schedule one-on-one time with your head coach, with your assistant coach, and say, look, I'm having some problems in economics. I'm having some problems in this class. You've got to continue that communication that you started in the entire recruiting process. There's no reason now to stop that communication. So, we talk about balance. A lot of it is just really organizing your support group. And I think athletes have an advantage because they have teammates that they can rely on. They have coaches they can rely on. And we all know they have faculty they can rely on. So the beauty of being an athlete at a small college, a small liberal arts college that's highly selective, is you have a unique support group around you that non-athletes don't always have. I think that's really one of the benefits of being a student athlete.
Coach, back to self-advocacy. There are some sports where highlight reels are just not as realistic, such as cross country or golf, things like that. How do you recommend those athletes best promote themselves? Are there other resources you think they could send to or communicate with for coaches?
Well, as a former golf coach, I think I can tell you that the thing about golf, it's kind of proofs in the pudding, right? If you go out there and you're a 3 handicap, you're a 3 handicap. If you're a 9 or 10, so you're going to have to let that coach know, where you are in terms of your ability. If you're cross country or track, if I'm 100 person and or whatever, there's a time associated with your, competition. So believe it or not, a lot of our coaches track that when they get their names. They'll go to the various websites and they'll find out, what that person is ability level. But I will tell you this about those 2 sports in particular. I think Robert Shankman develops, with his training methods, some phenomenal runners. So they may come in here at one level and leave at a level that's amazing. because of the way they may train here compared to there. I think golf's similar. Golf, really, if you have a good swing coach, my son was a high school golfer, and first thing we did was we got him with, a swing coach. And, when you get to college, it's no different. You may have a head coach that is, becoming your swing coach, but we are blessed here to have an assistant coach on our women's side, Sam Kern, that also helps our men. And we get our kids with a swing coach. So I think in those two sports, you can make really big gains, if that makes sense. Whereas if you are averaging 8 points a game in basketball, that's probably where you are. But like in cross country, it's so compelling to how individuals train and how they get better. And in basketball, you could be a high school conference player, and you could play for a coach in college that sees you as a defensive stopper. So the strategy really is so different in those sports, whereas in track and cross country, you have got to make gains to score points in meets, right? Because it's individual based. Whereas basketball, or other sports are so different because they're team based. And I may be a contributor in football, I'm on special teams. I may be an outstanding defender in soccer, but I don't score a goal. I may be a terrific baseball player, but I'm not a power hitter. Whereas like in tennis, golf, cross country, really swimming and diving, because quite frankly, your time individually determines your team's success as a whole, collectively. Different sports. So the training is so much essential, in my opinion, in those sports. Whereas you could be a player of, in a sport like basketball, and have a lot of value and never score the ball. So two really good questions about those sports. And I guess my point is, when you're in high school cross country, don't get frustrated if your times aren't the best, because at the college level, it's the job of the coach to help you train at a level that reduces those times, and you have more PRs, more personal records.
Thanks, Coach Dean. Another reminder to anyone listening, please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A box. Now is a good time to be submitting those. I'm answering those through typing, and I'm also bringing some of those to Coach's attention. But Coach, could you describe a little bit about how student athletes have been able to enjoy some of the activities that are maybe not as associated with student athletes at other institutions, such as studying abroad or internships or research? How are Rhodes athletes in particular able to tap into some of those resources and take advantage of those as a student athlete at Rhodes?
To me, that's why Rhodes is great, because it's not just about coming here to play a sport. It's about enjoying the whole experience for the liberal arts college. I'll give you a small example. I've had a lot of my former players that were in sororities. I've had a lot of my former players study abroad. Now, the challenge with basketball is it's kind of a 2-semester sport. So a lot of those were Maymesters or summer opportunities for my students that played that sport. But like if you're a fall sport athlete, we see it all the time, Caleb, where in the spring, our students study abroad. Vice versa, if you're a spring athlete, they may do it in the fall. We have a tremendous relationship because of Aaron Hillis and their work they do in the international studies area. So that's been at Rhodes for a long, long time, and that's going to stay. I try to sell that when I talk to a kid, because, I know basketball or whatever sport I coach is not going to be the whole reason they're here. It's for all those other experiences. When I had some kids that were in pre-med, I understood that some of them that were going to work their junior and senior year in situations at the hospital, right? So that's just kind of the way our coaches are trained. Our coaches know that the Rhodes experience is more than just their sport. That being said, I think it's also if you look at some of our success, it's tied into those student athletes now that are doing multiple things, that are, you know, competing in the classroom, um, competing for post-grad scholarships, you know, working in an internship, doing some other activities. Probably the hardest thing I would say to do, you know, like we have a phenomenal mock trial team, but you know, that's almost really a sport in a different way because I think it encompasses 2 semesters as well. So, you know, I'm not sure we've had many athletes in mock trial because of the overlap. But, you know, we just got some really, I would say, really challenging opportunities that are outside of athletics that make our students better. And we encourage that without question.
Thanks, Coach. I'm seeing a lot more questions about admission and how that works for student athletes. So if you're fine with it, Coach, I could take a second to explain a bit about what that looks like and how it.
Absolutely.
Um, as you guys know earlier, I'm an admission counselor, so that is my job. So I use my role to communicate with coaches to better understand some of their athletes and some of the story behind some of those athletes. But I'll tell you a bit about what we're looking for in an application. But I want to first let you know that every school looks for different things. So as you are looking into different institutions, be asking them, both the coaches and the admission counselors, what kind of things they're looking for in students and in applicants. So for us, we look holistically at your entire application. That means everything you submit, it's going to be important to us. We use the common application so that you guys don't have to submit an application fee. There's no fee to apply. There's also no extra essay, no supplemental question that we have you answer. We instead want to get to know you through either Zoom calls or hopefully in the fall person-to-person communication, either when traveling or when you come to visit campus. Of course, that stuff can be decided later as we are deciding on what we're doing on campus. But I want to tell you is that when you're applying, we look at things like your transcript, but your rigor, your academic profile is really what I mean there. That can be your transcript, but also your rigor, looking at how you're performing in your classes and what classes you choose to take. That is the most important part of the application. There is no necessarily minimum GPA. Or even test score. We are test optional this year, but on the GPA point, the GPA is something that can vary by high school. So if a parent or student decides to tell me, oh, my student has a 4.0 and a 1560 on the SAT, I couldn't tell you an answer. We look at how you're performing in your own high school. We know that some schools have a 4-point weighted scale. Others have a 100-point unweighted scale. We see all of those different types of things. We also understand that sometimes students like to preserve their good GPAs by not taking any tough courses. We can see that. So I'd encourage you to, as you're engaging with your senior or your junior or even your sophomore years, if you're very early in attending this session, be taking tough courses. We look at what are the toughest courses offered at your high school, whether it's APs, IBs, ACE courses, or honors courses in some schools. We look at the toughest things offered and see how you engage with those. So be taking tough courses. You don't necessarily need to overload yourself. You do want to see kind of how you can best operate under some rigor. But we look at those things. We also look at your essay. That's an important part of the application. It's really a writing sample to see how you write. You're going to be writing a lot at Rhodes in almost every course you take. We want to make sure you're ready for some of that. You will improve throughout high school and, of course, in college, but we want to make sure that you're ready to succeed. That's ultimately what we're trying to judge for. With your essay as well, that's the only part in your application where you get to tell us who you are in your own words. Everything else is data that we're looking through. So we'd love to hear more about who you are. Don't try to write to tell us what you think we want to know, but we want to know who you are and why you think some aspects of yourself are important. We also look at letters of recommendation. We do need 2, one from your college counselor and one from a core teacher. Your rising seniors, as you are starting on summer break or have been doing that so far, you're reaching out to some teachers who know you well. Keyword is a good letter of recommendation. Some of your teachers don't know you so well. That will not be a good letter of recommendation. Not just the most popular teachers, but the ones who really know you and have seen you grow and develop. Those are the people we really want to hear from. As for coaches' letters, you're welcome to submit some of those. I would encourage you to stick to around the 2 or 3 letters of recommendation for your application. Your coaches, I think, could better express to our coaches what they've seen in your development. But in terms of your application, they don't necessarily have to write you a letter, though you can include that as well. Don't be the person to submit 10 letters of recommendation, though. That is not as helpful. We want to pay attention to the rest of your application. But we also look at your activities, things you're doing for fun or things you do regularly. That would be sports for all of you, or other things as well. I saw someone playing cello. We see that students also are engaging in service, or they might have family responsibilities at home, taking care of a sibling or a family member. Those are all very valid things that we want to take account of. We want to see how you're engaging with your community in high school, but also how you engage with our community when you get to Rhodes. So those are some of the things you can include within activities. Whatever you're doing regularly, this doesn't have to be the one trip you took at the end of freshman year. These are things you're doing often for a year or even 4 years. We're looking at those things. Include leadership positions you have as well. We're happy to see that. But those are some of the things we're looking at within the activities portion and the rest of your application. Again, you are more than just a GPA or a test score. We look at you holistically. Whatever you submit in your application, we're going to review. So that's a bit about what we look at in the application. I'll share briefly about how to pay for college and also deadlines as well. How to pay for college: when you apply, your application is automatically considered for general merit-based aid. That means you don't have to apply for extra scholarships. That might sound crazy. Some other institutions actually make you apply for scholarships. That's fine. They have their own systems. But for us, we assume that if you applied for admission, you want to be considered for scholarships. So we're going to review them anyways. Those range from $8,500 a year to full tuition. There are some other scholarships available as well through other subject fields at Rhodes. Those would be things such as service, or students from Memphis, or Jewish Community Fellowships, physics, or STEM students. Again, those are outside fellowships where you kind of need to be a part of a community or do some certain tasks when you get to Rhodes in order to maintain those fellowships. But for general scholarships, you don't have to apply separately. So I hope that clarifies some things for you as well. I also include, I like to note that I encourage every family submit need-based aid or apply for need-based aid. That would be through two documents, the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Those don't open up until October 1st, so you have plenty of time for those. But I do think it is helpful for any family to apply for those, even if you think, oh, we won't qualify. That can be helpful sometimes. But those can often result in your student being awarded either grants, which I want you to know grants are good. That's money you don't have to pay back. It could be grants, it could be loans, or it could be federal work study as well. But you're not going to be eligible for those things unless you submit both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Lastly, I want to talk about deadlines as well. We have 3 admission deadlines: early decision, early action, and regular decision. Early decision, the first one, is fantastic for students who know they want to be at Rhodes. So if you're listening to Coach Dean going, you know what, this is checking all the boxes. I know I want to be at Rhodes. I want to be part of the athletic community there. You're talking with a coach at Rhodes. You are talking with an admission counselor. You maybe seen campus or done virtual tours, and you know that this could be the place for you. That could be a great deadline for you. The benefits of that is that you hear back within 2 weeks of your application becoming submitted. So in September, you could be done with your application. And that is an amazing feeling, especially as you guys probably watched some seniors last year really struggle in April to make their final decision. You would be done with that early in your senior year. You can enjoy that. You do not want to coast for the rest of the year, but you should feel comfortable that you've made your decision. It is also rolling, so 2-week turnaround. It is binding in the sense that if you are admitted, you do commit to enroll at Rhodes, with the one caveat being if it's financially infeasible for your family to afford to attend Rhodes with the package we offer, that could be released. So we can work with you on that. Through all of these, you have an admission counselor in our office to help you with that process. I oversee a certain territory. Other counselors oversee other territories as well. You have a person who's going to be your advocate at Rhodes. But to move on to another deadline, early action is good if you are between a few different schools in November and you're just not sure of which you want to commit to yet. That's fine. Early action could be good for you, and that's due in mid-November, and you hear back by mid-January, so 2-month turnaround. By that point, you need to decide by May 1st. That's the one date I want to give you is May 1st. That's National Decision Deadline Day. So when you need to decide on the college before that point. Regular decision is due mid-January, get back by mid-March. So you have just about a month and a half to decide once you hear back from us. But all of that being said, there is a deadline for each of you. We're not just going to push early decision. It could be very advantageous for some of you. And for others, you might decide to wait for some other ones. But I do encourage you to talk with both your coach, but also to an admission counselor. Coach Dean and all the other coaches, we work in a partnership. I talk with the coaches regularly as an admission counselor and athletic liaison. I want to hear what they have to say about their athletes. We do take into account athletics or your activities. Again, as I mentioned before, that can be non-athletics too, as part of admission. It does not play a role in scholarship. I do want to clear that up as well. We are a Division III institution, so there's not an athletic scholarship component at Rhodes. So I want to clear that up as well. But again, you have advocates, especially student athletes. You have coaches, your high school coaches, but also future college coaches, and you have admission counselors and your college counselors at your high school to help you with this process. You have people to aid you in this. So I hope that's encouraging to you. I hope that answers some of your questions about GPAs, admission requirements, things like that. I'll briefly mention, Coach, as well, the early read process. Some people have been asking that as well. The early read process is good if you are considering early decision. They are cousins, I would say. So they do go fairly closely hand in hand. The early read process is that if you're talking to a coach the summer before your senior year, you can submit your grades through junior year and your senior course schedule and a test score if you'd like, though we are test optional this year. You, in the next 3 years rather, you can submit those things and we can tell you if you would be admitted and maybe with a certain merit-based scholarship and in some cases need-based as well if you were to apply under early decision. Again, it is closely related to early decision, so that's really where the language comes into play there. But for that, the transcript, the senior course schedule, those can be unofficial for those of you who have asked, but they do need to match up when you do apply officially in the fall. So make sure that that is accurate. If there are discrepancies, you talk to us. That is what we need to know, but you do want to make sure that is accurate information, even if it's unofficial in the early read process. So, Coach, sorry for taking about 12 minutes of your time there, but I hope that clears up some of the questions we had about the admission stuff.
And Caleb, I just want to stress one of the things you said I think has been historically always true is regardless if you think you're going to qualify for need-based aid, fill out the CSS profile, fill out that FAFSA. They need that information. Also, I just want to thank everybody for taking their time today. I'm also a parent. My oldest son graduated from Rhodes, had a tremendous experience. Was able to be a student assistant with one of our basketball programs and just really positive, because he was challenged every day in the classroom. And, we're not even talking about other factors of playing on a sports team, but if you come here, play on a team and you don't become the star you thought you would be, trust me, as a parent, as a coach, as an AD, this education, it's really going to prepare you for the future. And we're really proud of our faculty and our staff. And I just thank you for your time today. And if there's any more questions, Caleb, I would be happy to answer.
Sure, Coach. I'm scanning through some of those right now. As I was talking, I was just focused on the words.
That's right.
But we do have, say there's another question just about how students are engaging during this time when we had to cancel our seasons in the spring and how some teams, I see a question about softball in particular, how are some teams staying in communication with each other, but also staying in shape? We know that that's an important part of any athletic training regimen. But do you have examples of how teams such as softball or football or basketball, how are they still staying in touch and staying in shape?
Well, first of all, I just want to say it was probably the most heartbreaking thing I've ever had to do as an athletic director is to call all of our coaches on spring break when they were out competing and let them know that the season had been canceled with, the virus. So that was the most difficult thing. And for those of you that do your research, our spring has been really, really our bread and butter in terms of on the field. And, we had numerous programs that were competing at a high level. But I'm really proud of our student athletes. Ever since we went remote, a lot of our coaches had continued contact with their teams via Zoom. And we've all really, to be honest with you, we've learned this platform and we've taken advantage of it. We didn't really use it before. And, I also can see as we get back in the fall that we'll continue to use this platform. And as we try to socially distance ourselves and have a season, I can see us instead of having a bunch of student athletes in a room that we may continue to use Zoom to communicate, regardless of the sport, until we feel very comfortable about where we are from a health and safety standpoint. But our student athletes are really close. We recruit about 30% of the of the student population annually, and probably, we have, like I told you, a little over 500 student athletes that are active right now. And even our student athletes that decide that the sport didn't work out for them, they stay and they get their Rhodes degree. Our student athlete retention is in the mid 90 percentile range, 94, 95%. So the experience, everything is centered around a student athlete experience. It's not just about winning. It's about getting the opportunity to compete, enjoying those relationships with your teammates, your coaching staff, and your faculty. And then also the other opportunities like Caleb mentioned about how Memphis fits in as well. And that always is tied into the work opportunities that come with some of our internships as well, because we're very fortunate to be in Memphis. There's a lot of opportunities in the corporate level that are presented to us here because we're in Memphis that some students don't have the same experience.
Thank you, Coach. And I also want to share that I was a student at Rhodes myself. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. I was not a varsity athlete, but I was a club athlete. What was really striking to me as well in my experience at Rhodes and becoming friends with a lot of the varsity athletes was that they are able to engage in life outside of their sport and outside of the classroom too. That was a really striking thing. But the coaches also care about students beyond just their athletes. I got to know Jim Ryan, the football coach, his first year at Rhodes, and what impressed me from the very beginning, and a big reason why I still hold such high respect for him, is that he got to know me as a student, and I was not one of his athletes. I did not play football at Rhodes, but he sought out to develop a relationship with me, and I still have that now as I'm working with him, but also just as a friend. That's something that I really value and really appreciate about a lot of our coaches, is that they don't just pay attention to their athletes. They obviously know them better than their non-athletes at Rhodes, but there's definitely a relationship that can be developed there. And also what was cool is that even some of the varsity athletes would maybe even join a club sport in their off season for cross training, things like that. So there are a lot of opportunities for your Rhodes experience and your student athlete experience to be full of diverse elements. And that's a really exciting thing about it too. But as we're getting towards the end of this program, I do want to say that, yes, we have been recording this session so that if you weren't able to catch most of it, or if you want to watch it again and hear some of our answers once again, we should be able to have that on our website or on our YouTube channel at some later date. I'll be working to make that happen. If we were not able to get to your question, either by answering it myself or Coach Dean, or answering it by typing it back to you, we'll try to get back to you as well to make sure we answer your questions. We have been saving those. But Coach Dean, do you have any final words of advice as these student athletes are looking at the next fall, both as students and as athletes, and as they're looking to continue their athletic recruitment journey?
I just want to remind them they're at the point where they've probably done a lot in their body of work as a student and as an athlete, and to be proud of that. And to realize, though, they may have lost this summer from an evaluation standpoint, that there's a lot of former coaches and current coaches that are probably in their corner. So continue to communicate with our staff if you have an interest in our program, and have those people advocate for you as well. And just know that, that's part of the recruiting process, regardless if we were in COVID-19. So sometimes from our perspective, hearing from a student athlete and a coach and a counselor, that gets the whole process rolling, regardless if we've seen you play or not. So, even though we have exposure in the summer, we don't see everyone. So, by you being on this call, maybe this will preempt you to reach out and email a coach and have your coach email our coach and get that process going.
Thank you, Coach Dean. Thank you so much for your time tonight and talking to our student athletes here. Again, listeners, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate you guys taking the time to be with us this evening. Again, we're going to try to get back to your questions if we weren't able to in this program. But I also want to encourage and quickly plug some of our later webinars as well. This is the first of a series of about 8 webinars that will discuss topics ranging from how to best conduct yourself in a virtual visit, how to conduct your college search when COVID places a crazy stress on that process. These are things that you can take advantage of now from the comfort of your home as well over the next 8 weeks. Again, you have coaches at Rhodes who are happy to hear from you, and you have admission counselors at Rhodes who are also excited to get to know you in this process and help guide you along. So Thank you so much, Coach Gene, for being with us tonight. This was a great opportunity. And thank you, visitors, as well, for joining us. I hope that you'll join us for another session sometime soon, but also connect with us for a virtual visit or just to get to know us better. We want to get to know you guys as well. So thank you so much for being here tonight, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you, Coach Gene.
Thank you, everyone.